As Glenn mentions in this podcast, he's betting his life on how he understands his health situation and what he should do to gain the healing he desires. He discusses failures and successes through his medical journey. The focus of this conversation is to learn about Glenn's story and the lessons he learned, not on the merit of his medical intervention argument. While we discuss his medical condition and various forms of treatment, the information provided should not be used for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease. A powerful way to discover the truth is to deeply challenge our own assumptions of what we believe and to seek out competing information and perspectives from the strongest people, groups, and institutions, and to invite the strongest arguments against our own. A dialectic between the best arguments for and against something are how we can deeply understand all facets and learn to discern what is most true as we make the best decision we can. Welcome to another Inspirational People interview on the Share Life podcast. Today I'm speaking with speaker, trainer, and author Glenn Carver. Glenn, say hello.
Hello, Jason. How are you today?
Doing pretty well. Good to have you here for the conversation. Glenn's the author of a book called Stand in the Heat, which is a series of interviews with various entrepreneurs, and a great read if you're interested in the entrepreneurial pathway. Glenn and I originally met years and years and years ago, probably through the Gwinnett Chamber, and through some mutual friends that were involved with Sales Partners, which was connected to a guy named Blair Singer and Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, for those of you who know who he is. Anyways, me and Glenn have known each other. We've had many lunches. We've worked together, and just had done life together in many, many ways. Anyway, I wanted to reconnect with Glenn, and so I invited him back on the podcast because he has quite a story. And working on his second book where he writes that. But we're going to talk about some of that story, which ended up hitting him in 2021 in August, COVID. We were the second year into the pandemic, and Glenn and his wife were at home, and Glenn was quarantining from his wife who had COVID, and she noticed he wasn't sounding right. Something about his breathing was wrong. So Glenn, take it from there and tell us what was going on.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me on your podcast. It's great to reconnect with you always. Life changed for me immensely early morning, August 15th. It was a Sunday morning in 2021. Like you just mentioned, my wife, Lisa, had COVID the week before, and she and I were trying to be responsible, and we were sleeping on different floors. She was upstairs in our bedroom. I was downstairs on the couch, and I have no problem sleeping on the couch anyway.
It was for a good reason this time.
Yeah, that's right. I was not in the doghouse. But, early that morning, she heard me from upstairs making some very strange sounds, some very strange exhaling sounds. And she thought I was having a nightmare or a bad dream. She came out of the bedroom, looked over the balcony, and I had my arms out in front of me like I was playing this imaginary piano, and my eyes were closed, and I was wheezing and huffing and puffing, and she started yelling my name, Glenn, are you okay? Are you okay? And I didn't respond, so she came downstairs, started shaking me, and I didn't come to. So she, thank goodness for her good sense. Yeah, she got me up somehow, my dead weight off the couch, and got me. I
assume
out
you don't remember this moment at all.
Rushed me to the.
I assume you don't remember that.
Actually, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Once she got me up on my feet, I came to enough that I could walk some. So she dumped me into the passenger seat of the car, and rushed me to Northside Cherokee Hospital emergency room, about 12 minutes away. And fortunately, it was really empty that time of the week, so they got me in very quickly, and very quickly assessed me with COVID, double pneumonia, and a blood oxygen level of 45.
Wow.
If you know anything about that number, I did not until I experienced it. 90 is low. 45 is life-threatening. You're talking potential cognitive damage. You're talking potential organ failure.
What's normal? The normal number, just day to day.
Normal, you want to be 98.
Oh, okay.
You want to be 98 to 100.
So you were
90 is low.
40,
yeah, I was half. So when the technician told my wife I was 45, they said it's the lowest they'd ever seen. And she said, "You mean during COVID?" And And he said, no, the lowest we've ever seen in this hospital. So
wow.
Miracle number one, Jason, was I survived that day. Easily could have been left in a body bag or been left with organ failure or some level of what I call Dane Bramage.
Yeah. So that seems like it went really fast. So were you ill like the days before that, or did it just hit you all of a sudden? Like,
yeah, great question. You know, a few days before, I felt just a tad achy, and a tad nauseous, but nothing major. I just figured I was never been sick a day in my life other than the flu bug, 24 hours, 48 hours. I figured I was getting something like that. It did never occur to me that I might have COVID. So when I got that diagnosis, it all made sense.
okay.
I got hit as one of my doctors said, I got struck by a bolt of lightning.
Wow. And so you get to the hospital. Are you conscious at that point, or what's the situation?
Yeah. Very conscious. Conscious enough to remember them getting me undressed and putting me in the sexy blue hospital gown and the bright yellow grippy socks, and they stuck me into the big General Electric CAT scan, and that's when they determined that I had the COVID and double pneumonia.
And what does double pneumonia mean? Does that just mean two lungs?
Both lungs.
Okay.
Yeah, both lungs. Because why do one? Why have single
when
pneumonia when you can have double pneumonia? Might as well have both. But I do remember.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it was that afternoon after they had assessed me and I was, headed to the ICU. I asked one of the nurses, I said, how long do you think I'm going to be here? Because I'm thinking in my mind, I'm getting a few shots, I'm getting some oxygen, I'm out of here in 2 or 3 days and everything's good. And she said, oh, you're going to be here at least a couple weeks. And,
wow.
After I picked my chin up off the ground, I said, 2 weeks? I can't be here 2 weeks. I've got a business to run. I've got a life to live. I can't be here 2 weeks. 96 days later, I left the ICU at Northside Cherokee Hospital.
Wow. So would you say that you just didn't think it was a big deal? Were you in denial? Were you panicking? Were you just like, hey, I need to move on?
I don't think I wasn't in denial. I never thought it would hit me like that. COVID hits different people very differently.
Yeah.
And the plot thickens a whole lot. This is just the beginning of the story. 2 weeks into my ICU stay, my colon burst. Started having internal bleeding. And
as a result of the sickness or unrelated?
A number of things. We may never know. Probably due to the cocktail of meds I was on, including remdesivir, which is just evil on 100 levels. I might have had some mild diverticulitis. The perfect storm really came to be when my colon burst and had to have emergency colon surgery on September 2nd. To keep from going septic and then going dead.
Yeah. So those first 2 weeks, you're just laying in the bed. You're mostly normal on oxygen, or are you unconscious? Or are you?
I was conscious and aware. Those first 2 weeks, hooked up to every wire and device that they have in the ICU, on oxygen. After my colon surgery, I came out. I was in a coma for 3 weeks, or as they described as a medicated nap.
Okay. You said 3 weeks?
What's that?
You said for 3 weeks?
Yeah, was in a coma for 3 weeks, and that was really when it was touch and go. There was significant concern whether or not I would survive and come out of that.
Did you go into that knowing that possibility?
No.
Okay.
No. There are always risks when you have a major surgery. I lost 18 inches of my upper colon. We still can't find it.
It's floating around in there somewhere. Now I'll just take a little segue here because you seem to. This is a pretty dark and scary thing that happened to you, but you have a lot of humor about it. So what's going on there?
Well, I'm just extremely grateful and blessed to be alive. It was darkest. It was darker for my wife and my family than for me.
Okay.
I mean, for 3 weeks, I was just on, propofol and some, cocktail of drugs that kept me in a fantasy land. I had some absolutely bizarre psychedelic dreams. Some of those I talk about in my book, Advantage of Adversity.
So you remember? You do remember them?
Oh yeah, I remember a lot of dreams, a lot of crazy dreams. But looking back on all this, I know that God spared my life in that ICU. There's absolutely no doubt. I know in every fiber of my being, He spared my life. There are 3 separate occasions when I could have died and probably should have. Yeah. And I didn't. And, but the death toll was just stunning during the COVID era of the ICU.
Yeah. So let's.
So I've got to. It's just me. It's my nature to see the lighter side of things and not get too heavy. Yeah. Because, like I said, God bless, I'm here.
So let's dive into that a little bit before we continue with the story. You said God spared your life, and your faith has become a real important part of it. In fact, it's part of your book title, your working book title. So where were you in your relationship with God before this happened?
Oh, fantastic question. I mean, I've always been faithful. I've always believed in God, believed in the higher power, the universal mind, whatever you want to call it, God, universal mind. Napoleon Hill called it the cosmic habit force. Whatever label you put on, the field. There's so many ways to describe God. I've always been a believer. But after what I experienced and survived, Jason, my faith is probably, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably a 12. I just know that God spared my life to continue to be Grant's daddy. I'm 56 with a 13-year-old. I was not going anywhere. No way. Yeah. No way in HE double toothpicks was I leaving that boy alone. And now I know I've got a tremendous purpose to tell an incredible story. My testimony, I believe, is going to be extremely powerful, and that's going to be a testimony of faith and mindset. And I believe that with the right faith and mindset, you can accomplish anything you can possibly imagine. Other than me becoming a professional basketball player, I think anything is possible. Yeah.
So is any of that, in terms of your faith, is any of that in these first 5 weeks, is that becoming more real then, or does that come in later?
No, it's real, but it comes in more powerful when I come out of my coma, because one of the chapters in my book is called The Wall of Hope. So my bed is, imagine I'm laying in my hospital bed and I'm looking at you, and that wall behind you, that entire wall, my sister and my wife just plastered that wall with pictures of family and my dogs and powerful motivational content and, Bible verses and just anything that was conducive to me seeing my way out. Yeah. I was focused on that. And I focused 24/7 on, I'm getting out of here. There's no way unfortunately a vast majority of people died in the ICU going through COVID. But, I just felt like if Viktor Frankl, who wrote the landmark book, Man's Search for Meaning, if he could make it out of, and I thought about this a lot, if he could make it out of the concentration camps and live to tell his story, I wanted to be a version of him. I wanted to come out of this and tell my story for a very long time. And, it's interesting. 3 or 4 years ago, I put one of my most powerful affirmations up on my bathroom mirror. Who knows? Maybe it was prophetic. Maybe it was in preparation for this. But one of my most powerful affirmations, Jason, is I will be speaking on an international stage when I'm 100 years of age. And that presupposes that, first of all, I'm going to live to be 100. And fine print says without drooling or wearing a diaper. So it got dark, like you said. You nailed the perfect word. It was dark. It was a very dark time period, about as dark as it gets. But in my core, my mindset, and my belief and faith in God, I knew that I was going to make it out of there.
Yeah. So you had that vision. So what would you say to someone, maybe they're not listening or watching because they're in that situation you were in, but you're talking to their spouse, their kids, it's Lisa or Grant. What would you tell them?
I would say believe. I know not everybody has the faith that you and I have. I mean, there are devout Christians and devout atheists, but you got to believe in something. I said, regardless of what you label it or what you believe, this will happen 100 times out of 100 times. Yeah. Whatever you call it, whatever you label it, we call it gravity. There's a power, there's a consciousness, there's a life force, there's an intelligence out there that we call God that is real. Call it quantum physics, the laws of the universe. You got to believe in something, but belief is everything. Your mindset, Jason, can literally heal you or it can kill you. And just like many of the people who didn't make it out of the concentration camps with Viktor Frankl, they gave up. They gave up their will to live and they died. And it's beyond humbling to have learned that I became a quote unquote celebrity in the ICU because of my positive attitude. And it really lifted up a lot of the doctors and nurses. This guy's going to make it out. I mean, I knew it. My family knew it. God knew it. And there was so much death at that time frame that they were thrilled to see somebody with a wonderful attitude who knew they were going to make it out. Belief is everything.
So what I'm hearing, I kind of at the high level, it's the difference between hope and despair, right? And holding on to the hope versus falling into the despair that can so easily consume us all.
It can consume us instantly. Even the strongest willed, strongest mind people are not immune from negativity and fear and anxiety and uncertainty. I've always said that we all have these cosmic curveballs swirling above our head. Some are good, some are bad. On August 15th of 2021, I got tattooed with a bad curveball. But it's how you deal with the adversity, the bad news, the negativity, how you respond to that and how you process it is going to determine your life. Literally, in some cases, whether you live or die. Yeah. So, maybe because I wrote a book called Stand in the Heat in 2012, I was prepared for this moment. Hope I didn't attract it. But, who knows?
So, okay, so it's 3 weeks. You're out of the coma. Then what happens?
Out of the coma, on the ventilator. Got a full tracheostomy. So got that battle scar to part of my story. Really laid in bed in a survival mode. Was on tons of kidney dialysis. As one of my favorite ICU nurses told me afterwards, I was on remdesivir, which can cause kidney failure within about 4 days. We did not want to be on remdesivir, but that's a whole nother. The purpose of this conversation is not an indictment of the medical industrial complex, but suffice it to say, a lot of the things that work and worked back then and work now are not available because of the COVID protocol was being pushed down from the top. So it was the fight for my life continued. It's a miracle I came home without an oxygen tank or without a dialysis machine. It truly is.
In terms of a permanent damage, is that what you mean?
It's exactly in terms of permanent damage. Things got really iffy for quite a while. A lot of complications after the colon surgery. And after effects
by the nature of the surgery or because of something else?
Yeah, I would say the nature of the surgery, but also the drugs that I were on. I mean, I've got two college buddies who were livid to the point of almost bearing arms and breaking me out of the hospital because of being on remdesivir. And my wife was trying to get ivermectin and monoclonal antibodies and the stuff that's been proven to work. So we won't go down that rabbit trail right now, but yeah, it was really sketchy for quite a while.
But at 3 weeks in, did you still actually have COVID after you woke up from the coma?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Or were you dealing more with all the after effects?
For my wife than me, because a lot of the stuff is missing in my mind.
So she's had to help you put some of the pieces back together.
Yeah, she's got a journal.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
So as you write your book, is she kind of the co-author then?
You can almost say that. Parts of it. Certainly in section 1. So section 1 is about the ICU. Section 2 is about, we haven't even talked about yet my cancer diagnosis. And then section 3 is about, the how-tos of overcoming adversity or finding the advantage in adversity, and what's in it for the reader.
Okay. So you're a month into this. You're there for 3 months. So what happens in months 2 and 3? Why are you still at the hospital for 2 more months?
Oh, because I literally withered away. Atrophy is for real. It's killer. The medical term is critical illness myopathy. When you don't move for 5 weeks, your body, and you don't use your muscles, you're not in motion, your body withers away.
Like dying while you're alive?
I'm sorry?
Dying while you're alive, essentially?
Well, physically, I became a rag doll. I was effectively paralyzed from the waist down. I could use my arms, but I couldn't sit up in bed. I couldn't roll over on my side. Could barely stand up, needed help. I was getting all kinds of occupational and physical therapy and speech therapy, and it was just a massive combination of trying to recover from withering away. I lost probably 50 pounds in the ICU in those 96 days. A lot of that muscle. I was over 200 pounds going in. Right now I weigh 142.
Yeah.
So, but I like being thin. I have one chin. I can see my jawline.
Yeah. You're like a whole new person.
That's right.
Born again.
That's it. Hey, in every sense of those two words, I've been born again spiritually and physically. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Literally.
So, what point do you get to where you can finally leave the hospital? Like, what was the reason they said, okay, you're ready to go?
Well, I finally could, eventually I was able to breathe on my own without assistance, whether that was the ventilator or the Optiflow or the BiPAP. I had enough oxygen, I had enough ability back in my lungs. I eventually overcame the COVID and the double pneumonia and had the ability to breathe on my own. Yeah. And that's when you can leave the hospital. So got off the ventilator. I had a Passy Muir device connected to my neck so I could speak. There was a 2-week period where I couldn't even speak.
Oh, wow.
As a speaker, that freaked me out, Jason. I'm never going to get my voice back. For 2 weeks, I was using sign language with my wife and the nurses, and nobody's good at that. And I had to use a pen to scratch questions on a notepad or a white eraser board. And, my cognitive ability was a fraction of normal for a time period. So I was going through speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, trying to get to a point where I could leave the damn ICU and go home.
So in your head, do you feel normal, but your body's not responding? Or is it even in your head, you're kind of like not all able to kind of be your normal self consciously?
Yeah, I wasn't all there initially. It freaked Lisa out. She asked me to spell certain words, and I had a pen and a pad of paper, and she told me to spell or add 2 + 2, and I was lost. She asked me to spell apple, and I think I might have gotten 2 letters out. That's when she realized, this isn't good. Is he going to come out of this? Is he going to be normal again? There were it was a lot more scary for her than it was me.
Yeah. And what are some of the ways she was able to navigate that without losing hope herself.
Yeah, a lot of prayer, a lot of people in church praying, and it's immensely humbling how many people across the country were praying for me, people I don't know and probably never will meet, people in different churches around the country. So we had a massive support system, thank God. Lots of wonderful friends and family members who supported us both emotionally and financially. I was out of work for a year. And after the ICU, I went to outpatient physical therapy for a month to relearn how to walk. So it was rough, brother. I mean, it was a year of just being knocked out of life.
Yeah. So, well, speak
but
to
not
the
completely.
community. Yeah. You got knocked down, but you got up.
Yes.
So speak to that idea, the community piece. Like, a lot of people go into crisis and they don't have that. But talk about what you did beforehand to cultivate that, and talk more about the importance of it.
Well, I've always, on the disc chart, I'm a high I influencer.
Okay.
Off the charts I, that's just who I am. I love people. I love networking. I'm a sales business development guy. So I've always been out and about as long as we've known each other, really my whole life. I love building networks and as big a part of the community as I can be. And the legendary Harvey Mackay wrote the landmark book. What's the book? Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive.
Oh.
One of his philosophies is dig your well before you're thirsty.
Yeah.
And I've always loved that. Dig your well before you're thirsty. When you have a wonderful network or community, you never know when you're going to need to lean on it. And we did. And our community came through us in a beautiful fashion with like I say, financially and emotionally, whether it was cash, whether it was gift cards to Publix, whether it was cell phone payments, anything you can imagine, people chipped in and helped. It was almost overwhelming.
Yeah.
Food, it's just phenomenal. Can't imagine having gone through this without our friends and community.
Is that the grace of God on your life?
I think so.
Yeah.
I really think so. I would agree with that 1,000%. Otherwise, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ICU nurses, a gentleman named Lucas Urea, he was a former Army medic. He spent 9 months in Afghanistan, and he saw his share of death in body bags. And he was in the ICU at Northside Cherokee during COVID for 2.5 years, and he said the death toll there was orders of magnitude bigger than the battlefield. And he told me 3 separate times, because I almost didn't believe it. I said, look, tell me the story again. It's hard to believe. But he said, in his 2.5 years working at the ICU during COVID, Northside Cherokee, he saw 3 people, 3 people go through the entire COVID protocol, including remdesivir and the ventilator. He saw 3 people come off the ventilator and leave the hospital outside of a body bag.
Yeah. So for you to
3.
survive was just a huge, big deal.
It's miraculous.
Yeah, a miracle.
It's miraculous. Grace of God, absolutely. No question.
Yeah. So anything else in that 90 days that you want to share before we jump to the next part?
Yeah, October 16th, ventilator came off my trach, lost oxygen for long enough that my heart stopped beating. And then the code blue alarms went off in the ICU. Code blue means somebody react immediately or somebody's going to die. And, fortunately, my said buddy Lucas was down the hall, and thank God he was on duty and he knew what to do. He came in and he immediately did, as they sounded the alarm, he did 3 rounds of compression on my chest, and I don't remember any of this. Brought me back.
Wow.
So between day 1, going in with a 45 level blood oxygen to the 3-week coma to going code blue, certainly you can make a case that 3 times I should have died. So I'm not I'm not sure how many lives I have left. I just need one more that lasts for a long time.
I guess the question is, are you a cat?
I'm not a cat person. I'm a dog person, but maybe I am a cat. I'll take it. I'll be a cat if I need to be a cat.
Yeah. There's a new movie called Puss in Boots: The Last Wish.
Okay.
And it's about Puss the cat from Shrek. And the premise of the story is he has 9 lives, and then he realizes all of a sudden that he's spent 8 of them, and he's on his last life. And so he's facing death and having to deal with it. So it's a pretty good movie.
I probably need to watch that one.
Yeah. So, all right. So, anything else in the 90 days other than the code blue that's worth sharing?
Yeah, I think we got the good stuff, the highlights.
Okay. So you come home, you think the you said crisis or suffering, like what was the word you used? Adversity. You go, yes. You think you're done with the adversity, and it's like, no, that was just the first part of it. So
that was the first half.
Yeah. So your health, obviously you're frailer than you were before. And all of a sudden you get this diagnosis. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I came home December 8th of 2021, February 2nd of 2022, went in for the second colonoscopy of my life at 54 years old. And they found a mass in my rectum. 2 days later, February 4th, I was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. So the ICU was the left uppercut. The diagnosis was the right hook. But I didn't go down.
Yeah.
It didn't go down.
Now you couldn't. Yeah, I was going to say, because of the because of where you had gone through, you were kind of limited in terms of healing remedies or healing approaches. So you had to kind of figure out another path, right?
Yeah, we picked another path because after the colon surgery, I was left with a colostomy bag that was supposed to be temporary, 90 days. And that was the nature of the colonoscopy, was to check everything out, scope me out, make sure I'm copacetic, make sure I can schedule an effective reversal surgery. And that's when they found the mass. So we ventured down the conventional pathway immediately because that was recommended to us by the doctors, because that's what they know. Standard of care for cancer is chemo, radiation, surgery. Well, I was so compromised after spending 3 months in the ICU that we felt like chemo probably could have killed me. Mm-hmm. And it probably would have. A lot of people die from chemo before they die of cancer or any type of conventional treatment. I've still got a port in my chest right here because I was supposed to start chemo on March 16th of last year. And somehow we got the nudge. We got the nudge quick enough as Lisa dove deep into our options. And she discovered a gentleman named Chris Wark, W-A-R-K. He wrote a phenomenal book called Chris Beat Cancer. If any of our listeners have ever been touched by cancer or know anybody who has, that's a great book to read. It will open your eyes to the alternative ways to heal from cancer other than chemo and radiation. And we jumped all in. Said no to chemo.
Where are you mentally? Where are you and Lisa mentally? Like you feel like you finished the race and now you're starting another one. Are you freaking out? Or are you sad? Or are you depressed? Or are you still pretty positive?
Yeah, somehow I stayed positive. Maybe because I wrote a book called Stand in the Heat, I was prepared for it. I did not freak out. I did not go into a state of fear and anxiety and depression. I think I realized immediately why, if God spared my life, if by the grace of God my life was spared in that ICU, Jason, why would I die of cancer a year later? That made no sense to me. It made no spiritual sense to me. I believe my life was spared for a reason. And I believe that reason is my testimony for the rest of my long life. a testimony of faith and mindset and teaching people how to find the opportunity in adversity. So I did not freak out about the diagnosis. And one thing we've learned, and this might be the most important thing we talk about, is that cancer is not a death sentence, Jason. It is a metabolic condition. It is an emotional condition. I created it, and God and I are going to heal me from it. But there are certain parts of the medical industrial complex who will attempt to put the fear into you to get on a certain treatment path that's very, very profitable. And I'll leave that at that.
Yeah. We won't dive into that. But what are, you're exploring these alternative options. And then you read this guy's book. I know and then you found some ways to do this treatment. So how did things unfold? Was it a slow process? Did you find quick results? Are you still going through the process?
Oh, I'm still going through it. I'm not out of the woods. I'm stage 4. That's a label. That doesn't freak me out at all. So I've got colorectal cancer with metastasis to my liver, some nodules. And it's, you don't turn a battleship in a bathtub quickly. This takes time. All of us are born with cancer cells. Most of us get cancer at some point in our life, but our immune system knocks it out. Imagine that. So I've got a dear friend whose cousin was stage 4 with breast cancer, and she decided to go the alternative route, went to there are many clinics in Mexico that offer alternative treatments that you can't get in the U.S. Last May of 2022, I spent the whole month of May in Mexico getting alternative treatments. I continue to be on a whole food, plant-based diet. It's amazing what we've learned, Jason. Just about any chronic dis-ease can be cured through God's pharmacy. What comes out of the ground, the nutrients that come out of the ground, plus great supplementation. And like I've mentioned 1,000 times, my trinity, my trifecta for healing is faith, mindset, and nutrition. Nutrition for the metabolic component, and for the emotional component is my faith and mindset. And so it's just
now. So how do you reconcile? Like I look at someone like Steve Jobs, who also pursued these alternative paths, and it didn't necessarily work out for him. So how do you reconcile when it's appropriate or when it's not? Or how to approach that?
Yeah, it's an amazingly personal decision. After I got out of the ICU and shortly after my diagnosis, I was going to a center here in my backyard to deal with post-COVID neuropathy in my feet. And after I got diagnosed, I was speaking to a brilliant chiropractor, and he said, at some point in the near future, Glenn, you're going to come to a fork in the road, and you're going to have to choose between conventional treatment or alternative treatment. And he was very serious, and I wasn't ready for that. That was a little bit scary. I mean, it takes guts to say no to an industry, especially when you get all involved in their paradigm of the world, and to say no to all that. I feel like I'm literally betting my life on what I believe. And I've said this to my wife several times, and it sounds kind of cryptic, but I've already accepted my death. I mean, I really have. Yeah. And I mean that in a positive way. I mean, I know based on my faith where I'm going, and if I were to die, that would be a beautiful place. But I think because I've accepted that emotionally, that's not going to happen. But it's a dance. I mean, you can go to the World Series of Poker in Vegas and put all chips in. You can put $100,000 in or $1 million in. If you lose it, you get up and you walk away and you live to play another day, another round. But I'm betting my life on what I believe in. My healing is between me and God. It's not between me and anybody in a white coat.
Yeah. So, so I guess where does that put you today?
right now I'm in a state, my last CT scan, I'm stable. My tumor hasn't grown. It hasn't reduced. It's stable, which in the alternative world is a huge victory. First you got to stop something from growing, pause, and then get it to reduce. It doesn't happen overnight unless you have a radical remission or some supernatural, miraculous healing. And I know somebody who's experienced that after being baptized. But it's the longer path that I believe we've chosen, but it's the path that's right for me. And my intention is to reduce it naturally so I can have an effective reversal surgery.
And what does the reversal surgery do?
Oh, removing the colostomy bag that I'm.
Okay.
Currently. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Ideally, I mean, being alive with a bag is better than being dead without one.
Yeah.
But if I could be alive without one, that'd be even better.
Yeah.
Just trying to return to normalcy.
Yeah. So this whole story kind of revolves around this idea of adversity. So tell us kind of what you learned, what the takeaway is, where that kind of brings you in terms of just your own.
Great question. So, what is the advantage of adversity, which is the title of my next book that'll be out in the fall. I believe that it's the decision, it's the choice to find the opportunity in adversity. Because as long as human beings are walking this earth, Jason, there's going to be adversity. It's human nature. Whether it's personal or professional adversity, there's always adversity. I'm a huge fan of the late Jim Rohn. He was phenomenal. He's one of our great motivational speakers. He was a business philosopher. He was Tony Robbins' original mentor, and he did one of his live events in the 80s. And afterwards, one of his attendees came up to him and said, "Mr. Rohn, in your opinion, what is the business climate going to look like for the next 3 to 5 years?" Which is a great question. And without hesitation, he said, "Well, it's probably going to be the same it's been for the past 10,000 years. Adversity with a chance of opportunity." And I just love that. That's just always, that tattooed my brain when I first heard that. And there's always going to be adversity, but how do you deal with it? How do you perceive it? How do you move forward is going to depend the quality of your life. And I think the poster child of opportunity and adversity recently is Zoom and what we're doing right now. You think about this, and I heard this a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's still true, but I heard a couple of years ago, because of the pandemic and the whole world going online, that Zoom, this tech startup out of Silicon Valley, Zoom had a market cap larger than Ford and GM combined.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, it kind of, it helped kind of standardize it, because Zoom was around before the pandemic, but when it hit, all of a sudden everyone's using it, whether they wanted to or not. So it sort of forced adoption. And then, then all the value kind of, probably maybe even too much. People are like, well, why meet when we could just Zoom, And so it probably went too far the other direction, which I think we can recover some of that and kind of find a good mix between the two in terms of in-person versus digital. But yeah, it really changed the game in a lot of ways, and many of which I benefit. And kind of you talked a bit about like going through this experience. For me, when I shut down my marketing company, Noodlehead Marketing, in 2013 and 14, ended it in April of 2014. It was pretty rough. It was a pretty rough experience making that transition. It was almost like a death for me. Like my child was dying, this entrepreneurial dream. And, but in many ways that experience prepared me for the pandemic. And you've kind of talked a bit about that some of your past experiences, the book and whatnot, kind of prepared you for this journey. Anything else you could say about that, or that you would want to say about that? Like, before you went into the fire, you got a little bit of preparation?
Yeah. Well, preparation prevents urgency. Dig your well before you're thirsty. Yeah. That speaks to having a wonderful network and community around you. That's probably why solitary confinement in prison is the ultimate torture. We need people. We need association. We need relationships. We need love.
We're dependent.
Yeah, totally. But know why you're here. Go deep. Know why you're here. Why did God put you on earth? I know why he put me here. And I know that's why I'm still here. But know why you exist. What's your mission? What's your purpose? How are you going to show up in the world? What kind of legacy are you going to leave? You mentioned Steve Jobs. What size dent are you going to put in the universe? I live to communicate and contribute, and I love helping train on mindset and helping people think bigger, individuals and organizations. Think bigger, realize their greatest potential so the organization can realize its greatest potential. But ultimately, it's, you and I, individuals, thinking bigger, handling adversity in a positive way, and looking for opportunity, because opportunity is everywhere.
Yeah. So through this experience, how do you think about living better and working smarter? What does that mean to you now?
Well, living better, I'm a lot cleaner than I've ever been. My diet is immaculate. It's funny. One of my dear friends asked me last year, we were talking about the subject of centurions, people who live to be 100. He said, Glenn, what do all centurions have in common? And I said, well, obviously they have a great attitude and a vision for a long life. He said, nope, they're all thin. That's simple. So I got that piece down. But yeah, I've cleaned up my act. Hey, there was a period in my life where I was drinking way too much. I admit it. That's not healthy either. So from a metabolic standpoint, I've completely overhauled my life. And, spiritually, I feel like I've absolutely been born again. My faith is immense, very clear about where I'm headed, giving myself a lot of grace for self-anger and shame that I've put on myself over the years, which, by the way, every form of cancer has its own unique emotional root, and colorectal is self-anger. So I've never considered myself an angry guy, and I think anybody who knows me would agree with that, but I've had a lot of self-anger. So right now I'm going
How do you define that? What would you say is self-anger?
For me personally, I just thought I'd be much further along professionally and financially at this age. And despite all intentions, things don't always work out. Fortunately, I hope there's a lot of runway left. But the one thing that my ICU nurses kept telling me when I was such a rag doll and could barely move is they said, give yourself some grace. That was their mantra, give yourself grace. So I'm working on that now, giving myself grace, forgiving myself for how I've judged myself in the past and shamed myself in the past and been angry at Glenn Carver in the past. Trying my best to let go of all of that. I'm here. I'm alive. Got a beautiful wife and a beautiful son. Great friends like you. Great community. Just game on. Sky's the limit.
Yeah. So talk about mentoring, because I think that's obviously as a speaker and a trainer, that's your profession, is mentoring people. But it's also been a big part of who you are in terms of the people that have mentored you over the years. So talk about mentorship. How do you think about it? What does it mean to you?
Well, I think it's critical for anybody and everybody. Everybody should have a mentor and a coach. And one of my mentors was Wayne Dyer. And I remember I met him once in person in 1994. That was a great day in my life. He used to say, your mentors don't have to be alive. They can be other speakers, authors, trainers. So I've got many mentors that I've never met, like Stephen Covey and, Tony Robbins, Harvey McKay. My father was a great mentor to me. He was one of the most positive people who's ever walked the earth. So mentorship, coaching is critical. If you want to move from A to B in your life, point A is right now, this moment in time. If you want to move from point A to point B, whether that be a week, a year, or 10 years, it helps to have somebody guide you somebody who's further along down the path, somebody who thinks bigger than you, somebody who can stretch your vision, somebody who can hold you accountable, get you out of your comfort zone. You know, most of us, everything we dream of is typically on the opposite side of fear. And there's good fear and bad fear. Good fear keeps you from putting your hand on the hot red stove. But there's also debilitating fear that's in our mind that is just an absolute roadblock. So having mentors who stretch your vision and shine light on the path, whether you know them or don't know them, I think is critical to make a move in life.
Yeah. So let's talk about stories and narratives. And I think you've kind of alluded to this quite a bit in terms of like, you had a narrative that helped you retain the hope you had. And you mentioned the Holocaust. I mean, I heard once that a lot of the people that didn't survive, they believed that they weren't going to be rescued, and the people that survived believed they did, right? That was the hope that you mentioned.
Right.
So what are some real and or fictional narratives that have shaped you as a person, in this journey or just in your life overall?
Well, wow, that's a great question. It's a pretty deep question too. What's coming to mind is, I think the greatest compliment I ever received in my life, I was probably 11 or 12 years old, from my Little League football coach, is he said, "Glenn, you're the greatest person, not player, not football player, so you're the greatest person I've ever coached." And I mean, that rings in my head every day. I'm 56 now. I still hear that every day. And I'm not exactly sure why he told me that, but it set in place an expectation, a foundation to grow upon. And I've lived with that ever since. I felt like I should be doing something great with my life, not just walking through it or fumbling through it without any purpose. So that's been a great part of my narrative, is somebody told me when I was very young that I was a really good person. And that's
interesting. It's also a contrast to that self contempt you were talking about. Isn't that an interesting?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And who knows? Maybe if I hadn't been, in this space of coaching and training and speaking since, 2004, maybe I wouldn't have been as mentally tough in that ICU. So my personal narrative has been one of expectation, of purpose, of knowing that I'm here to do something that's meaningful and impact the lives of as many people as I possibly can.
Yeah. What would you tell that person that's struggling right now? They feel like there is no purpose. They feel that nihilism, that darkness, that sense of meaninglessness, wondering if they're on their own.
Yeah, that's a great question, because one of my dearest friends of 20 years took his life last September, primarily over money. But it was deeper than that. I think money was just the straw that broke the camel's back. But he was a few years older than me, never got married, never had kids, didn't have his own real sense of family. And I think when things got tough financially, he gave up. And I miss him dearly every day. But what's coming to mind right now, I saw a quick video, a reel of Gary Vaynerchuk a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about the odds that we're even alive. The odds that one sperm connected with one egg and created you and I. And it was some astronomical number, like 400 trillion to 1, some crazy number. So to somebody that is feeling dark, I would say, know that it is literally a miracle that you're alive today, right now. Even as dark as things can seem, it's a miracle you're here. You're here for a reason. You've got some purpose. You're just off track. And we all get off track. I mean, we've all been depressed at some level in our life, and upset and anxious and fearful. but it's a freaking miracle that you're here. And you've got to buy into that and know that you can come out of this darkness. And somewhere deep down in that adversity is some opportunity. And that's what you really got to strive to find, is what am I going to learn from this? You know, in my first book, Stand in the Heat, I talk about the second law of thermodynamics. The greater the heat, the greater the expansion. And we know what time and pressure does to coal. It turns it into a diamond.
Yeah.
So if you're in a dark place, if you're depressed, and I can't judge anybody. Who am I to judge any man? I've never been clinically depressed, and I understand that's the worst. But there's got to be a reason you're still alive. Even if you're struggling, you're suffering, try to find out why did God, or whatever you label that intelligence, why did he put you here? It's no accident.
Yeah. Now you've been through a lot, and you've been hurt by people and organizations and systems. And some of that has been through your medical experiences. So what do you do to prevent yourself from becoming cynical? How do you protect yourself?
I got a bracelet on here from one of my doctors that I've had on for a year and a half. It says, keep going.
Okay.
So that's some good advice. Just keep going. One foot in front of the other. I've probably, the last couple of weeks, overdosed on content from David Goggins.
Okay, I'm not familiar with him.
He's labeled the toughest, the baddest man on earth. The toughest. He's the only human who's ever gone through SEAL training, Army Ranger training, and some Air Force.
So like
training.
A Jocko Willink kind of guy.
Oh yeah, exactly. Anyway, you just can't quit. You can't quit. You can't make excuses. You got to have discipline. But I think it goes back to the question before. You got to figure out why you're here. Why are you here? Why are you alive? Why did God put you on earth? What is your purpose? What are you supposed to do? But you got to just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And, heaven and hell is right here. We create our own heaven and hell. This mind, that's a powerful tool. It can keep us in a state of bliss, or it can keep us in hell by the way we think, by the way our neurons fire. I'm a big fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Went to 2 of his retreats last year. And, he talks about, quantum physics and how we get addicted to our emotions because of every emotion that we have has a chemical associated with it. We literally get addicted to the chemicals in certain emotions.
Yeah.
So, got to be aware. Got to kind of step outside of yourself and watch yourself. Be the observer of your own behavior and your own emotions and your own mental choices. Easier said than done, but it can be done.
Talk about systems. I think you've kind of leaned on like when systems can go wrong and how they can cause harm, become tyrannical. When is a system good, and how do you think about systems in your life and work?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I mean, you and I know very well how important systems are. And anybody who's read Robert Kiyosaki's second book, The Cash Flow Quadrant, the SBI, systems, if you're going to shift from being self-employed or an independent contractor into a business owner, you need teams and systems. But I think you've got to have daily systems. You got to have a morning routine that starts your day off right. I mean, some people wake up and because of their mental system, their mental rehearsing, they're in a bad mood. When my eyes open, first of all, when my eyes open, immediately I do a 1-hour meditation. For me, it's a combination of prayer, meditating, and affirming. But it's a specific meditation I do by Dr. Joe Dispenza. So my personal system in the morning is getting my mind right, thanking God every morning that I wake up, that I'm awake another day, that he spared my life in the ICU, that I'm here for a very specific reason. So have a system for running your morning. Otherwise, days can get away like that. Do something positive.
Life can get away like that.
Life can get away. Yeah. Pink Floyd said it the best. What happened in the past 10 years? They can get behind you so quickly. So have systems in your personal life. Have systems for, I mentioned your mission and vision for your life. I read a list of I have a gratitude list that I read every morning. I have a list of affirmations that I read every morning. So I make sure that I start the day out in a powerful state, in the right mindset. And, I consider myself a pretty positive dude, but I'm human, Jason. These negative cosmic curveballs can come out of anywhere and knock me out of the right mental state and into a negative state. And before you know it, I'm yelling at somebody, either my wife or my son or myself. And I'm human. It just happens.
Yeah.
So have systems for keeping your attitude right. I think that's the most important system you can have.
Yeah. So what else? Any other parting words of wisdom? Anything about your story you didn't get a chance to share that you want to talk about?
Well, we've covered a lot here. I guess I'd have to read my own book to see if I forgot anything.
What did I forget?
So we talked about the ICU, the miracle that I made it out. God, praise God. The gift of cancer. Oh, this is crazy. Woo, we've heard some phenomenal stories about cancer in the past year. It's amazing how many people who were healed 5 and 10 years down the road who consider cancer the greatest gift of their life.
Yeah, I've heard that by some friends too.
Not quite there yet. I can see it. But, cancer is not a death sentence. It's a warning light. But it's incredible to think that some people see it as their greatest gift because of the shift it helped them make.
Well, and it can differ too. Like both of my grandfathers died of cancer. But I know with at least one of them, it kind of changed him in some really profound ways that it took that to change him.
Right.
And and in that sense, I see, although he's not with us anymore, I see that as a gift to both him, his marriage, and our family.
Yeah. So, absolutely. No, there's no question. You got to see the silver lining in the cloud. Ultimately, you've got to see the advantage in the adversity, and that's what we're talking. That's the bottom line of this interview and this conversation is the decision, the choice to find the opportunity and the advantage in adversity.
Yeah. So, and there's something about hearing like your story of adversity. Most of us haven't necessarily gone through that. We may never go through that.
I hope you don't.
But your story can help us learn what you learned without us having to go through it.
Yes.
So that's one of the passions I think you have as a speaker. Tell us about your speaking and who might be a good fit to reach out to you, say, hey, I want to hire Glenn to speak and tell this story to my organization or whatnot.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, anybody who will gather, anybody who has an interest in growing the mindset of their organization, I don't care if it's 5 people or 5,000. If you want to grow your people, you want to grow your teams, ultimately such that it has an impact on top line revenues. I mean, the purpose of a business is to attract a customer and make a profit. So, I started knocking on doors, Jason, when I was 10 years old. So I've been in sales and business development my whole life. My father taught me when I was very young, nothing happens until the cash register rings. So ultimately, I like to speak to teams, revenue generating teams that could use a boost in their morale, in their mindset, in their mental toughness, in their ability to go out in the world and attract opportunity. That's what really juices me, is helping people think bigger and realize their greatest potential so they can have a bigger impact on the collective organization. Yeah.
So that kind of brings up another question then I have for you, which is, you kind of made this shift. I think a lot of times we go through an experience like this and maybe we change for a moment, for a month, for a couple months, and then we just sort of slide back into the old way of thinking.
Sure.
But it seems like for you, it was like a permanent shift in terms of the habits that you developed. What is that? Am I observing that correctly? And what do you think the difference is?
Yeah, that's a very correct observation. Yes, most of us do slide back. Behavior changes a bear, but when you've stared death in the face, that'll change you. Case in point, I drink 64 ounces of fresh squeezed carrot juice every day, 5 pounds every day. And I've actually got a little bit of an orange hue to my skin. It's not a tan yet.
You can see really good in the dark.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm turning into a rabbit. And I'll drink carrot juice. I'll juice for the rest of my life. I'm thin. I don't recommend the weight loss program that I went through. But hey, being thin is a key to being a centurion. I got that. I'm learning, like I said earlier, I'm learning forgiveness. That's a huge part of healing. As Dr. Joe Dispenza says, in order to heal, you must first change. So I'm trying to catch myself when I judge myself or get angry at myself or others in my immediate family. I'm going through a big forgiveness exercise right now where I forgive anybody and everybody, whoever might have hurt me. It's pretty deep.
Yeah.
My parents got divorced when I was 5 years old. I'm sure there's some trauma for that. So trying to forgive me and my parents, both of whom are no longer with us. But a lot of significant permanent change is taking place with this dude. Yeah.
Where can people find you if they are interested in hiring you or buying your book? Where do they go?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the book will be on Amazon. The Advantage of Adversity will be out in the fall. Stand in the Heat is for sale.
Okay.
Still believe that's a valid. I think I've been standing in more heat in the past year than I did when I wrote that book.
Okay.
But
is that book on Amazon too?
It is. Yeah, Stand in the Heat is on Amazon. You can reach me at glenn@glenncarver.com.
Okay.
Glenn with 2 N's.
Okay. And social media or anything, or LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook?
About to launch a YouTube channel.
Okay.
About to launch the Advantage of Adversity video podcast like this. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I'm really jazzed about A, being alive, and B, launching this new brand and contributing to humanity at the highest level possible for me.
Yeah. Got it. Well, thank you, Glenn, so much for sharing your life with us today.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason. Thanks for the opportunity. And can't wait to see you live and in person as opposed to virtual here in the near term.
Yes, for sure.